I know that face. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's kind of bright in here. Um, well, hello, and welcome to everybody who's going to be coming up in advance. We have some good questions. As I always say, we always do. And we have someone really great to answer them for us. And I know that we're all very appreciative. So thank you, Dr. David Rosensweet.
You're welcome, Carolyn Shapiro.
Carolyn Amy Shapiro. You can add
Amy.
that in. Okie dokie. I'm going to start off with question number one. It's a question that comes in. It's an interesting one. And the response to this question, this woman got interested me. The questioner says, I started estrogen. I've been taking it, and I have extremely sore breasts. The answer that I got, just a glib answer that came through, was take 2 Tylenol twice a week and it should get better. And I was wondering what your thoughts might be on that in regards to sore breasts, estrogen, and taking a couple of pain pills to relieve that.
Mm-hmm. Of course, that was not a recommendation or advice that we or anyone affiliated with us gave. That would
No,
be,
no, no, not at
I
all.
would consider that to be
It wasn't even
incorrect.
on our site.
Yeah, that's very incorrect information. Breasts are very responsive to estrogen. A young woman, when she has a menstrual cycle, once a month, she prepares for possible pregnancy. The uterus prepares for possible pregnancy by forming a uterine lining that can receive a fertilized ovum and sperm. Her breasts prepare once a month for breastfeeding.
Right.
Right there in the monthly menstrual cycle, even though it could be more than 9 months away. It still begins preparation every single menstrual cycle. And what you do is the hormones promote the growth of breast glandular cells in anticipation of possible breastfeeding. And so you get cell division of breast glandular cells and you get additional cells. And many women experience this as a breast fullness occurring once a month. Some women even get breast tenderness, especially those who don't have adequate balance by progesterone, or especially during a stressful month when there's excessive estrogen recruited for the stress response. So some women get breast tenderness once a month. There's some imbalances there. And the breasts actually get fuller because there's more breast glandular cells that have formed. And then if the woman does not become pregnant during that cycle, during the end of the cycle, those new breast glandular cells disappear. And the breast gets smaller and less full. And that happens once a month. And that's primarily under the influence of the hormone family of estrogens. So when the questioner says, I started estrogen and I got breast tenderness and breast pain, it sounded like.
Yeah,
what's going on there? The most common thing that's going on is that she's on an overdose. She's on too much estrogen.
Right.
And what it speaks to is that her guidance has not been thorough on how to properly arrive at a proper dose of estrogen. For example, one of the most common methods used in the compounded bioidentical hormone world is a process called titration, where you start with lowish doses and you see if those lowish doses alleviate the symptoms of low hormones, like symptoms of low estrogen, like hot flashes, night sweats, stuff like that. And you gradually increase the dosages of estrogen in an attempt to alleviate all the estrogen deficiency symptoms. And you've posted this on Ins and Outs of Menopause before, and you might want to post it again for this woman, because here's a list Here's a list of symptoms of too little estrogen and too much.
Right.
And the goal is you gradually increase the amount of estrogen, for example, and along the way you are alleviating symptoms of estrogen deficiency, such as hot flashes, while falling shy of or backing down from symptoms of hormonal excess. In the case of excess estrogen, you get overstimulation of breast glandular tissue, you get breast pain. So as we educate the women in the menopause method, our patients, we say, should you start getting breast tenderness? In fact, try and detect it early, because you may not feel breast tenderness unless you press on your breasts. So every so often, press on your breasts. You'll pick it up earlier. If you start getting breast tenderness, don't go higher. Don't continue to increase your dosages. In fact, if it advances to breast discomfort or breast pain, do something else. Do this. Stop increasing the dose and maybe even back down, or maybe even omit for a day or two, because you're trying to find your optimal estrogen dose, at least in the beginning phases, which has to do with clinical discovery of symptom alleviation. Now, there's more to it than that, because these hormones are fat soluble.
Right.
That means they not only have their direct action in every cell in your body, they also accumulate into the fat cells in your body.
Right.
And, the breast has a very high percentage of fat cells. So by the time you get breast tenderness, for many women, you've got some building up of the fat cells in the breast of estrogens. Now, when you build up estrogens in the love handles, which have fat tissue, there's no consequence, because there's no tissue anywhere near it that is affected directly by estrogens. But when you build up estrogens in the fatty tissue of the breast, it can take a while. So you can stop the hormones, but you can still have breast tenderness. So it's a real art. Once you've moved into overdose, as identified by excessive breast tenderness,
Right.
I'll define excessive in just a moment. Once you move into overdose, you can pause and not increase the dose, or you can stop and wait for the breast tenderness to go away. Well, interestingly enough, you don't want to wait that long, because your whole body could drain of sufficient estrogen. You could start getting hot flashes again. Meanwhile, you still have breast tenderness because you had estrogen accumulated in the fat tissue of the breast. So there's details. It's not a big problem, by the way. It's not a big deal. I don't want to make it sound like a big deal. This is just how we do it. We figure it out. We like to not have a woman go so far as to get breast pain. We have her stop earlier. We alerted her to this. In the menopause method, we have videos describing this for women. Don't do it. But if it happens, it's not that big of a deal. And sometimes in the initial phases of treating with estrogen, a woman will get mild breast tenderness. And sometimes we'll say to the woman, stay with it. Stay with the process. A lot of that initial breast tenderness will go away as your receptor sites once again awaken and become used to having estrogens again. And
yes.
so it's not a simple answer. I can't go so far as to say you're on overdose, stop. No, we dance it out with each individual woman, and when it's gotten to breast pain, the best thing you can possibly do. Oh, what do you know? It comes down to the absolute first law of menopause, and maybe the only law of menopause.
It's written in the Annals of Time book.
Yeah. In the Constitution of Menopause, the first clause is, we the women have a job to do, and it's go shopping to find a licensed healthcare provider who really likes treating women in menopause and knows a lot, and even has some experience or is getting mentored. and is involved in an active training program. That's the first law of menopause. Once you get that one down there, not a lot more you have to do.
No, there isn't. And I think that that is such an astute, beautiful, amazing thing that you say every single interview. And I
Because
get,
you want, once you get into breast pain, I listed, as I was answering this question, different possibilities and different ways to proceed. So what we do in the menopause method is, well, we'll come up with an idea for tomorrow. Like for this patient, I would say, well, you got breast pain. Why don't you stop for a day or two? And then we see what the result of that is. If the next day she's getting hot flashes, we have a report in, we might say, "Ooh, time to resume." Well, I still have breast pain. Yeah, that will go away. We already know your body's dipped too low, so it's a delicate balance. So it's always an individualization.
was it like the take two and call me in the morning type thing?
Yeah, it's call me in the morning, text me in the morning, let me get an email from you.
Okay.
There come some situations that we like to deal with on a daily basis. They're not too common, but when someone goes over the top into breast pain, that's an example of someone we want to walk it out step by step by step. Sometimes a woman, her body hasn't seen sufficient estrogen for a couple of years, and she starts taking estrogen even in low dosages. But in those couple of years, a lot of her receptor sites have gone dormant,
Yes.
sleep. So to a young woman, what would have felt like a small dose, to a woman who's got only a fraction of her receptor sites online and operational, you give her a small dose of estrogen, those receptor sites could stimulate breast tenderness and breast pain. And so it's always evaluate each individual woman. It's always customize what to do with breast tenderness and breast pain, woman by woman by woman. But not to make it a big deal. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It just requires adjustment. It just requires a process. It's all
Thank
part of
you
the
for
process.
that. Because
Yeah.
we do tend to worry. We do. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't help it.
We're not concerned at all by short-term overstimulation of breast glandulars. We are around long-term. We don't want to be doing that for 20 years. I had a patient, God, must have been 20 years ago. She came to my office. She was on Premarin for many, many years. And when I met her, she wanted to try bioidenticals for some reason. And when I took her medical history, she had never had breast tenderness a day in her life until the day she had her total hysterectomy and she was put on Premarin. Then she had 20 years of breast tenderness.
That's a
We're not
lot.
looking for stuff like that. The whole deal, it wasn't that Premarin was a problem for her, although I've never prescribed Premarin, nor would I. It was she was on an overdose, so no one picked it up. So breast tenderness is a sign of a dosage issue or insufficient balance from progesterone. So you want to have someone who's got some experience and can say, "Oh, breast tenderness. Well, here's what you do." We're not concerned about a month or two or three of breast tenderness, but we are a no breast tenderness method, menopause method.
Right.
Our core mantra medically is we are a no breast tenderness method, and that we're referring to the long run because we don't want overstimulation of breast glandular tissue over the long haul.
Right.
Not
Right.
because we're worried about it, but because we like to get everything as great as we possibly can. And there's no need to overstimulate breast glandular tissue.
Right. Right. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. I really wanted to bring that question up, and I appreciate that. We have some responses, and I see everybody. Good morning. This next question is an interesting one, I think, just because I've learned about it. Number one. Number two, I know that you'll be able to answer it. Thank you so much. Questioner says, I have the MTHFR gene from both parents. Now, the MTHFR SNP gene um, oftentimes is referred to as the celebrity, oddly, SNP only because so many people say that they have it. And I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, I'm being serious. So this woman says, I do have it. I have it from both parents. My one doctor is saying that there is no way she is going to treat me with estrogen. No, no, no. I will not absorb it. But my GP is saying,
Her GP or is
her
it her?
general practitioner,
Yeah,
general practitioner
yeah.
is saying, wait, you absolutely can take estrogen. You're going to have to supplement with a few things that I don't know if I can mention or not. He's like, yeah, absolutely. You can take estrogen, as long as you supplement. And I have no problem in giving that to you. But her hormone specialist is saying, no way. And she's stuck in between these two things. And she doesn't understand a whole lot about the MTHFR gene, SNP. Admittedly, nor do I.
That's called a modern medical diagnosis. The basic diagnosis is being caught between a rock and a hard place.
Oh, that thing.
That's her
My dad taught
diagnosis.
me that. What do we do?
Well,
I mean, we need estrogen, right?
I've never known the true number of how many different biochemical reactions take place in a human body. It's got to be in the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. I don't know someone's done the count, I'm sure. Maybe someone in our group there would Google how many biochemical reactions are there in our body. How many different biochemical reactions. And one of those biochemical reactions has a whole group of them have to do like, how do we process vitamins and minerals and help them do their good thing? And that MTHFR, I don't ever get that right, or MHTFR.
I can pronounce the whole thing. I mean, I won't even say it. It's rude.
So these are names given to genes in our DNA that govern our DNA, and they relate to specific biochemical reactions that relate to how we process a vitamin called folic acid. That's the main way that we either do a good job with processing it or we do a limited job with processing it. And those who have that genetic homozygous situation, that means there's two of the same gene. And every biochemical reaction in the body is ultimately taking place at the behest and direction of DNA and genes. It's just astounding how this all works.
Crazy.
And this particular gene set governs how we process folic acid or folate that comes in through our diet. And it's essential vitamin. We need it. And some people process it really well and handle it really well. And those with are homozygous have a double whammy of the mutation. They don't handle folic acid as well. And the usual remedy is take extra folic acid, or as my mother used to say, eat your vegetables.
She wouldn't let you treat her, but she made you eat your vegetables.
Now, she wasn't referring to the MFTHR, pardon me for messing up the acronym.
MTHFR. Yeah.
MTHFR. She wasn't, but it stands for mother.
It does.
And that's what so you've just listened to your mother for many things, not necessarily all things. She was telling me what to do. She was saying,
she did a good job. I got to tell you that.
So eat your vegetables, because those who have that particular genetic mutation, they need an extra doses of folate. You want to get high levels of folate. So you want to eat a lot of organic vegetables or take supplemental folic acid.
Yeah,
it's available through every single supplement company, and you can hardly make an error with too much because it's a B vitamin. It's not fat soluble. It doesn't accumulate like vitamin D or vitamin A does. So you
Okay.
can drench yourself in this.
Well,
Let's talk about how it relates to hormones.
yeah. I mean, what about
Question
it?
number one, does
Yeah.
it relate to hormones?
Right.
Like ultimately, you can have all kinds of genetic variations that control, for example, hormone biochemistry. For example, how does the liver process, metabolize hormones? You get the ovaries producing estrogens. Well, what does the liver do with those after they've gone into each cell and done their thing? The liver transforms them. Well, how well does the liver do that? Well, I don't care what someone's genetic readout is. I care about evidence of the suggested trouble with the biochemistry.
Got it.
Because you can have a propensity, a genetic propensity to do this and that and not do some things well. Oh my God, there's thousands and thousands of things we can do excellently genetically. There's thousands and thousands of things we can do not so well. Oh, thank you, Tiffany. 37.2 trillion.
Trillion.
Oh, God.
I know.
All of those have something to do
You
with
folks.
enzymes and genes. It's, these biochemical reactions. I wasn't aware that there was, that might be how much of all. I was really referring to how many different types of biochemical reactions take place. I don't think it's 37.2 trillion. There's probably 37.2 trillion biochemical reactions taking place in any given moment. But at any rate, back to the basic genetic alteration, MTHFR, we don't want to know that. I don't want to know so much as they have that mutation. I want to know, how is that mutation behaving inside of their body? Is
Right.
it giving them trouble or not? Well, we can
Right.
assess that.
Right.
There's very sophisticated and the 24-hour urine hormone test, for example, that costs $290 is the best deal in medicine that exists. And it lists most of the ovarian hormones and their metabolites,
And
and
analyze.
adrenal hormones and their metabolites. We get to see, oh, is the biochemistry funky? We get to assess that in the 24-hour urine hormone test. Is there too much of this not favorable metabolite and too little of the good metabolite? That's what it comes down to. We do not rely on genetics. We do not genetically test people. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for genetic testing, but we certainly don't genetically test women in menopause. We listen to their symptoms, we evaluate their laboratory tests, we treat them with hormones, and we see what happens. And we get a chance to look at the details. And if it's implied that genetic mutation gives us trouble, well, let's find out if that's real. Because I've heard a lot of people get worried about a lot of things, and a lot of things they don't have to get worried about.
Right.
And this sounds like one of them. You do the same thing regardless whether you've got that mutation or not. You see how is it playing out in the metabolism of estrogens. Now, I may be uninformed here because I'm not aware that particular gene, other than B vitamins, are involved in so many biochemical reactions, including folic acid. This is an essential vitamin. I'm not, this could be me not being aware. There are things I don't know, but I don't see the direct connection between trouble with not having enough folic acid, because usually that can be overcome by sufficient or robust amounts of folic acid. Now, I would take B12 also, and B6 and folic acid, because they're often involved in the same biochemical reactions. So if someone has trouble with folate, I wouldn't just give them folic acid or folate. I would give them folate plus B12 and B6. And if you have that genetic variation, you need to take more of that stuff.
So maybe her GP has more
Correct.
knowledge.
I say the GP is correct.
Yeah, I do too.
And bottom line is we can find out.
That's the
as
cool
we
thing.
do in 100% of every woman. We don't test women right out of the gate. That's a waste of time and money and can be confusing. But when a woman is about 3 to 5 months into her hormone replenishment program and she says, wow, I feel better, we say, good, now we're going to test you. And then we'll see if there's biochemical abnormalities as they pertain to hormone processing. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen hormone processing issues. They're usually due to the liver. They often take place in people who have challenged the living heck out of their liver. V, thank you. V is saying there's,
Boy, she went there.
yeah, there's 37,000 billion chemical reactions per second in the human body.
It's
Yes,
just a
that's the
cute,
sum
small
total.
number.
That's the sum total. And thank you for this staggering piece of information. I'm curious about how many different types there are. But
Yeah, it's methylation, right? Isn't
well,
that something that?
methylation,
Yeah.
yes, methylation does play a role in hormone metabolism, and
I
yeah,
mean, these women are amazing to me because they're really digging deep, 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 as you say, deep into the weeds, you know? Women want to know.
yes. And here's Sean saying, my doctor is versed in MTHFR, and he said I need to take a good B complex.
That's the GP. Yeah,
That's correct.
I agree.
That's correct. And specifically, out of B complex, you want to know, and sometimes you want robust levels of folate or folic acid, B12,
B6.
B6. And my favorite way to deliver B12 is in a methylcobalamin because
Yeah.
methylation is taking place with respect to hormones. So there you go. Eat your vegetables. Take some extra vitamins and minerals. I don't know how anyone can make it and do fabulous in this day and age without some extra vitamins and minerals. And if you got that MTHFR, like your doctor says, take a really good B complex every day, like I do. I take a really good B complex every day.
And I do too. And who knew? You know, it's been 4 years now, but I thought I knew, and I didn't know humbly anything. Um, but thanks to the powers that be, I know a little bit more now. So these questions are just amazing. Thank you for the information, V. Thank you for everybody. Um, we will go on to question, geez, I guess, wow, number 3. So what happens?
Carolyn, I'd like to say a little bit more about the genetics.
Oh,
That's
please.
such a question. You know, there's a new kid on the block in scientific testing, and it's the field of genetics is burst
Mhm.
open as we can analyze people's genes. And the first thing I observed was people got to be alarmed over a whole new body of information. That was one of the reactions to it. Oh my God, there's this and that. I didn't know I had this and that. Oh no, what's going to happen to me? And I was really disturbed by that because in medicine, the prime directive is identify things that are going on and see if you can improve them.
Right.
And don't get lost in the science that doesn't lead you to the improvement. And sometimes it does with genetics. But there's genes, and genes govern ultimately biochemical reactions in the body. And you
Okay.
want genes directing good biochemistry.
Right.
But let's not overplay genes. I grew up in a world where it sounded like nothing was fixed in the universe. Nothing was sealed in rock in the universe except genes. In other words, if you had the genes,
Uh-oh.
it's all over.
Yep.
That's not true.
No.
And there's this discussion has been going on very vigorously. Well, I first encountered it in the 1970s with a medical doctor in New York State, Ravici, said, look, what are genes? They're this interesting point in the spectrum between material and energy. And everything's multidimensional on this planet. And there's a spectrum between things that are pure energy. And that's at one end of the spectrum. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's things that are pure matter, so to speak.
Right.
They're all a combination. Even this table even my desk right here is matter plus energy when you get down to the atoms and the electrons and stuff.
They're all moving.
And where genes are energy, matter, genes are at the junction between energy and matter. It's where energy in the form of information translates into actual material.
Wow.
The information affects our bodies in such a way that it's causing stuff to happen. Genes are right there at that focal point. That's why they're so interesting.
Yes.
And what Dr. Avici pointed out, and many others have, is it's not so much the genetics you have. Our basic genetics is for health. It's how are you informing those genes? What kind of information are you bringing to those genes? Like, for example, genes want to cause healthy biochemistry. That's their natural propensity. But
Yes.
if you poison them, literally, if you poison them, they got to do something different. They've got to behave in a different way. So what Dr. Ravici was trying to point out is it matters how we treat these genes.
Mm.
Because if you don't treat them nice, they're going to try and adapt. They go, okay, well, we can't do our normal thing. Let's see if we can do something else to try and adapt to these stressful circumstances we're under. Thus was born the science called epigenetics. The epigenetics is, well, how are you talking to your genes? For example, if you get exposed to a lot of herbicides and pesticides through your, quote, diet, through non-organic food, your body is getting some information that's rough. And it's rough right down there on the level of the genes. You're telling your genes, we're in trouble. We're taking into our body some stuff that is not healthy for us and is giving us trouble. So the genes will try and adapt. They may even mutate to try and come up with something new. And that's a vulnerable moment in the life of any gene or cell. You start changing these genes, you start forcing them into a different way of being that they have to invent on the spot. So let's not get too fixed and fascinated by this information on genes. I have yet to see genes, and there's probably folks in our audience that could even educate me on this, but I don't see a tremendous amount of information coming out about genes that translates to great benefit to the human being yet. Now, I'm probably wrong about that. Then there's certainly some genetic illnesses, and there's been some great strides made in genes, so I don't want to be an old stuck in the mud dinosaur. But at the same time, I'm concerned about people getting carried away by the mental information that floods the public. Because what it's going to come down to, with all this detail that we understand, it's going to come down to 5 things that are going to matter for your health and vitality. 5. And that's what everyone has a lot of control over. And if you do these 5 things good, your likelihood of getting healthy and happy for a long, long time is way elevated. And if you do not do these 5 things good, you're putting yourself in jeopardy, and they play out. You cannot do harsh things to your being and your physical body and not expect that there's no consequences.
Correct.
So here's the big 5.
Yeah,
This
please.
is more power to the people, because every human being can do a good job of the big 5. Number 1, what are you putting in your body? What are you breathing? What are you drinking? Are you breathing air that's clean and not loaded with lots of toxic stuff? Are you drinking water that's relatively pure and not loaded with heavy metals or hormone debris? Or, as I learned this morning on NPR, cow pee, there's 1 million cows on the planet, I learned today, and their urine has become a problem as it's making it into the water supply.
Well, they have 4 stomachs. I don't know how many bladders they have, and a lot of methane. So I don't. I wouldn't think that
So,
would be good.
yes, not to drift too far from the point, it matters what you're taking into your body, and nothing probably matters more than what you're breathing, what you're drinking, and what you're eating. And these
Information.
days, you can go into a grocery store and you can be looking at stuff that looks like food. However, what you may not know about modern agribusiness is conventional food is loaded with chemicals, herbicides and pesticides and chemicals. How much poison does it take to knock out a weed? How strong does it have to be? How much poison does it take to kill insects that are eating up? How strong do they have to be? Strong, and there's a lot of them. So what you're taking into your diet, what you're breathing, drinking, and eating, that matters. That's one of the five. How much exercise you're getting, whether you're getting just the right amount. We're really meant to be physical, or you're doing too much, or you're doing too little. So you're using your exercise program. You're pushing yourself too hard and hurting yourself. Are you doing the optimal amount of exercise? Number three is how much toxicity you're taking in from all kinds of sources.
Yeah.
Do your household cleaning supplies? Does your dry cleaning? Uh-oh. You start getting into the world of how many chemicals we're exposed to that are not good for us. So toxicity is an issue. That's number three. Number four is how you respond to the stress of life.
Yeah.
Stress in life is very, very important for our multidimensional development and growth. There is not a need, but it does matter greatly how you respond. How many emotional and mental tools do you have to deal with the stresses in life? That's the elephant in most people's rooms. What it comes down to is they're activating way, way too much, way too frequently, the biochemistry of the fight or flight situation. That's really detrimental to the health. And then there's a fifth and mysterious cause. And I don't want to go into the great mystery, but there's things in medicine that they're just not explainable, certainly to me. I have theories, I've studied this, but I'm not even going to put them out there right now. But you got a 3-week-old baby who gets deathly ill and passes away. You can't necessarily explain this by the big four. So there's a mysterious element to people getting ill, and we got to respect that and not judge them for that. As one of my mentors told me, don't ever judge what's going on with another human being. Don't ever judge if they're suffering deeply. It's all part of living and spiritual growth, and it all counts and it all works. So I'm drifting a little far afield here because people get lost into the intellect and these amazing uncoveries by science, and I'm fascinated by them. I have been. It's one of the things that was so fascinating to me about college and medical school. Genetics was fascinating to me. I can picture my genetics professor in 1963, a Japanese American, and they were still being heavily censored. And what he told us about genetics, it was just phenomenal. I have a lot of respect for it, but let's not get carried away by the intellect. Where you want to put your shoulder to the wheel is acquiring more information and skills around your own emotions, your own mind, and how you make choices and create your life. Put your time and energy into that. If you do that, you're going to like yourself more. You're going to want to take better care of yourself. So that's going to move you towards eating better, prioritizing the health of the food you take in, prioritizing the air you breathe. And also, it's going to get you very interested in cleaning up your house and your environment. It gets cheaper. What do you know? You get your cleaning supplies down to Babo and vinegar, and you ain't spending much money and stuff.
You're brushing your teeth and you're showering and you're cleaning this and that with the same thing.
All these products disappear.
In a good way, because you can smell them
Yeah, if you can smell it, look out, folks. There's something in there that is probably not healthy for you. So what I wanted to say is, let's put our eye on the prize.
Okay.
Let's take care of ourselves. And it all begins with working on our mind and emotions in our lives, because if we do a good job, we're going to like ourselves more. We're going to love ourselves more. We're going to want to take better care of us. And we're going to care more about what we're eating and how we're treating others. And, it all stems from those kind of choices. Put your
Right.
time and energy into acquiring information and skills that relate to your emotions and mind and how you create your life. And thus, what will happen is you'll cut down on the fight or flight biochemistry that you're throwing yourself into,
That stress thing, yeah.
and you'll make better choices that are kinder and softer for your own body.
So do you think that that helps the menopause process?
Well, yes, it absolutely does. I mean, it's midlife, but I'm not saying instead of,
No, no.
I'm saying, and by the way, replenish those hormones and you get it done, get that done excellently. Absolutely, absolutely do that. And take supplemental vitamins and minerals. We live in a day and age where our biological strains are high, so take a great multiple
Right. And we spoke of that last
and
interview.
other stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. You can't just go outside and eat a rock. I mean, you know, to be able to absorb it, but it's important, and we get right back down to this every single time. It's doing the doctor shopping of the people who know definitely how to give you those supplements and how to help.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who have very significant expertise in
You're
steering
going
you
to be
towards.
interviewing one, I think, soon. Am I incorrect or correct?
We are in the process of negotiating with a supplement company to put out a menopause method brand. Yeah,
Nice,
label it. Yeah,
nice,
and so
nice.
we do the heavy lifting for you, because I've had a 50-year interest in vitamins and minerals and supplements.
That's something to pick your brain about, I suppose. Let me ask you this in regards to something that has come up, and it is what happens if someone chooses to not take DHEA? Is this a dangerous thing, bad thing, not good thing?
DHEA is a biochemical in our body that is extremely prevalent. And some call it a hormone, some call it a prohormone. But one thing we want to look at is there's more DHEA than any other of these ovarian hormones or adrenal hormones. Maybe there's a reason why there is. Since there is.
It's the great ideas.
And what happen yeah. And what happens in everybody, because I've tested people for decades and decades and decades, is everyone, as in everyone, hormone levels decline over time.
Right.
What declines? Well, in menopause, menopausal women are most familiar that estrogen declines, progesterone declines, testosterone declines. Well, so does DHEA. Everyone, no exceptions, male and female. So I've never heard someone being afraid of DHEA.
This person
And,
is.
and we always, as part of the menopause method, we replenish 4 hormones minimal, because they always go low in menopausal women. So the estrogens in the form of bias, progesterone always, testosterone always, and DHEA always, because they always go low. And what we do is replenish them up to healthful levels. We don't have to replenish them to youthful levels. And like anything else, should be afraid of DHEA. I think there is something to fear in the DHEA world. Like my mentor in DHEA, Alan Gaby, a medical doctor, a pioneer in holistic medicine, thank you, Alan, said, don't ever give a woman more than 15 milligrams of oral DHEA. 15. no more than 15 milligrams. Well, you walk into a local uh, big box pharmacy, and I've seen bottles of DHEA at the checkout counters. I don't know if they're still doing this, but certainly on their supplement shelf, where the most common thing you could buy is 25 milligrams.
Try 50.
Try 50.
Yeah, that's
And
what
if
I
people
got.
don't know that for women, the absolute upper limit of normal is 15 acceptable. And I've tested women who were on 15 milligrams and they had too much DHEA in the metabolites in their urine. So some women, their optimal dose is 10 milligrams. Some women, it's 7.5. We got to customize these. You're
Right.
probably going to be safe at 15 and not going to get yourself in trouble. But is there anything to be afraid of? Yeah. Women should not be taking 25 milligrams or 50 milligrams of DHEA.
It's crazy that they even sell it. I don't know. To me,
I think it's the FDA a setup here. Oh, I don't know if it's the FDA. I think it's a setup because, or there's not enough knowledge out there. Pardon me. I don't know what the true motivation is. I think there's just a lack of knowledge. I think there's a lack of knowledge of what is the appropriate DHEA dose. And for women, it should not exceed 15 milligrams, or you're going to test out with excessive and imbalanced hormones. So, yes, we supplement DHEA in every woman and in every man because they're low. However, we have parameters, and we ultimately test by 24-hour urine hormone testing, so we know how much is in their body, and we don't go into excessive levels. We know what they are, so we don't do it. The difference between DHEA dosages and, let's say, thyroid dosages, or let's say estrogen doses, is very few human beings are going to overdose on estrogen or on thyroid. Overdose on estrogen, just like that very first question you posed today, most women get breast pain, sometimes severe. And they're not going to overdose. They're going to start asking the question, what the heck's going on here? Let's see. Before we took hormones, I had normal feeling breasts, and now I have breast pain. Something's wrong.
right.
So all these hormones speak loudly.
Yes.
Excessive amounts of thyroid. People get jittery like they ate 18 cups of coffee in the morning. What's going on here? I've got a tremor. My hands are trembling. I didn't tremor before I increased my thyroid dosage. My pulse was shooting way up. I got heart palpitations. People they don't tolerate excessive thyroid dosages or estrogen or testosterone. Women who takes too much testosterone, they realize that something's going wrong here. I want to punch everybody out here.
Right, and they're going to let you know. Yes.
And same with progesterone. You don't take too much progesterone, or you're going to get groggy during the day. You're going to feel like you're drunk. Most people, this is what happens. DHEA, not so clear. Like our card that you posted on ins and outs of menopause. Let's see. It lists too little and too much estrogens, progesterone, and testosterone. It does not list DHEA because we can't predict what DHEA is going to do, and there are no distinct symptoms of DHEA overdose or DHEA underdose. Now, some could argue that it eventually becomes testosterone or estrogen, but you can't get clear indications. So the moral of the story is you should be knowing that particular number. Women, don't go out there and take above 15 milligrams of DHEA, period. Don't do it. And, many of you, that's going to be too much. But at least it's not going to be big problematics because too much hormone, always a problem. It's not a question about, is it a problem to take too much hormone? Always. Sooner or later, the medical field is just riddled with stories that people got on too much cortisol or too much estrogen or too much testosterone. There's stories galore. So these hormones are the most powerful biochemicals, most feelable stuff that we take in. So don't do it. Yes. So don't be afraid of DHA. Just get it right.
Right.
Not too much and not too little.
Exactly.
And we know what those parameters are, and we have defined them on the 24-hour urine hormone testing, what's too much and what's too little.
And it's extremely fascinating to me. Even, God, going back to what you were talking about in terms of genetics and all that, it's been a really good interview for me, for sure. Yeah, we have 10 minutes. Here we go. This woman has found herself not having a period for 14 months. It's like, okay, I'm in menopause, and then bam, she gets a period. And then bam, she gets another one a month later. And she's on her way to getting another one third month. What
Yeah.
is going on? Is she in menopause?
Well, when she
Period?
was 20, she plus or minus a couple of years, her ovary were producing the most robust levels of 4 hormones than she'll ever do in her life. Age 20, plus or minus a couple of years.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, her hormone levels are declining, 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 and declining. And there are consequences of that decline. And then there's this dramatic moment where there's just not enough lymph left in the ovaries, and they stop. But the decline continues,
Right.
but they stop producing adequate levels of estrogen even to have a period anymore. Now, what about that transition time? Well, the classic diagnosis given by gynecologists that is usually very reliable is that if a woman does not have a period for a year, she's in menopause, those ovaries are done. That's how they define classic, when is a woman really in menopause? No period for 1 year. But you get these outliers. So this woman didn't have a period for a year, but then all of a sudden there's a period again. And the things to pay attention to is it could just be normal sputtering. I've heard some people describe this phase of life as the sputtering ovary. In other words, it's erratic. It's erratic. It's erratic. It won't do much, and then all of a sudden it'll have a little outburst. A woman will have a period or two. Talk to any gynecologist. There's a ton of this kind of erraticness going on.
Right.
Now, is that the end of the story? Not for me. Because our training is that there can be such a thing as called abnormal bleeding.
Right. Don't want that.
And we don't. After a year, since that's in the unusual category, one would not expect to bleed, although gynecologists are far more familiar with this than I am. I don't run into that many stories of they went a whole year and then waited a couple months. But I'm gonna get my best shot is this, that it's quite possibly just one of those sputtering ovary things. Okay, big surprise. Maybe you had some stress. Maybe that gave a last squeeze out of the ovary with some excessive estrogen, enough to produce a period. Okay. And that's all it is. And eventually you're going to no longer have any kind of bleeding. But there is an outlying chance that that bleeding was abnormal. And what's the abnormal bleeding that we're concerned about? Endometrial cancer.
You bet.
And I have been doing this long enough, so over 25 years of specializing in treating women in menopause, I've had 2 cases of endometrial cancer. And pathologists tell me this, that these women bleed. Gynecologists tell me this, these women have abnormal bleeding. And so when you're more than a year out, would I like to see that check, bottom line? Yeah, I'm a due diligence kind of guy. I want to find out. That's outside the norm. I want to get something called, and this is what I recommend to you, a visit to your gynecologist. They are fully equipped to evaluate that bleeding. This is their territory.
They're special.
And they're going to, if they're a good doctor and you trust them, or a good nurse practitioner who's specializing in this and you trust them, they're going to know what to do. They've been trained how to handle bleeding that's outside the norm.
Right.
And it might be as simple as they're going to do a pelvic exam and then they're going to do a transvaginal ultrasound, a very, very, very tolerable, non-painful, no big deal experiment. They're going to do an ultrasound of the uterine lining. And they're going to learn from that, oh no, that was just a little extra endometrium that formed for whatever reasons of stress or whatever. Or they're going to say, you know what, that looks irregular. We want to do a biopsy of that. So because you're outside of, a little bit outside my comfort zone, I'd say check it out. Because when you catch these things early, they're 100% curable.
Yes.
You catch an endometrial cancer when it's just announcing its first little spot, and you do an ultrasound, and it's just a small irregularity, and you do a biopsy, and even if you have to have a hysterectomy, that's the end of it. You don't have a recurrence. You cure that thing. You catch it early.
Right.
So that's how I always lean. When in doubt, okay, you gotta schedule an appointment. You gotta go to a doctor's office in this day of COVID. Oh God, who wants to do this? But having seen as many women as I have, and having seen endometrial cancer that announced itself by an irregular bleed, that's how they do it. That's how these endometrial cancers announce themselves. Well,
Best
this woman
safe
could
than
just as
sorry.
easily have a physiologic, no big deal thing. So I'm not trying to scare you, but I am. If you're going to ask me, having seen what I've seen, I'm going to say err on the side of caution. You got to bleed, get it
Yeah.
checked out. It doesn't
Yeah.
take that much to get it checked out.
Right.
No,
Right.
no fun. Oh yeah, it's just what I want to do today. I want to call up a doctor's office and make an appointment and get a pelvic exam and a transvaginal ultrasound. Gee, I can't wait. No.
And then go to the dentist after that. That
Yes,
sounds
right.
like a great day. Not.
So I do have compassion. I do have compassion.
Well, it
But
actually can be
the right
fun.
thing to do is, and this is what this question comes down to, the right thing to do is make an appointment with a gynecologist. They'll know how to handle it. They are heavily trained on how to handle uterine bleeding that's a little bit out of the ordinary. And they may say to you, don't worry about it. We'll see if it continues. Or they may say to you, no, let's do a transvaginal ultrasound. But they know how to manage these things. And it's worth getting their expert opinion on it.
Absolutely.
Because if you do have something adverse, which is a possibility, even if it's a small possibility, you handle that thing early, it's a piece of cake. Not a piece of cake, but you get what you really need is a guarantee for your health.
Yes.
And your longevity.
Yes.
You let things like that wait, not a good idea.
Denial is not.
Yeah, it's nice. It's going to drag on your consciousness, and it's just not the right thing to do. It's get it evaluated, and that's my final answer to this woman. Oh God, as inconvenient as it might be, get this one evaluated by a gynecologist.
Yeah. Well, geez Louise. You know what? They're kind people, good people, well trained people. Help us make it the best experience you can. And then
That's right.
what else are you going to do? Just complain the whole way over and forget it. You can actually have fun. Geez, Dr. David Rosensweet, we actually got through every question that I had written down 2 minutes before 8 o'clock, which is unheard of. We did, and we have some amazing screenshots that I'll get.
And I'm going to sign off again because, lo and behold, I've got a hard stop.
You taught me that word. I use it all the time now. I stole it from you, and it's a respectable way of saying, gotta go.
Yeah.
You have an amazing weekend. Thank you so much.
You too, Carolyn.
Always.
Always fun. Always a pleasure. And to all of our viewers, hello to you. It's a delight to hang out here and answer questions.
We've been doing it for 1 whole year and a month, twice a week. I think we missed 2, and that was it. Have a really, really, really enjoyable few days until we speak again on Tuesday. And that goes for everybody else as well. So we're going to say goodbye.